Hey everyone, welcome to our V-Ray 5 for SketchUp webinar. We're really excited to walk you through all of the great new features that are now in V-Ray for SketchUp. Over the course of the next hour or so that we have together, we're going to talk about some pretty amazing new stuff. First, we're introducing real-time visualization throughout the entire design process with V-Ray Vision. We've got a new feature that's going to let you light your scenes automatically, and it's called Light Gen. We've made some improvements to the new sun and sky system that works especially well at sunrise and sunset. And we've added some new layers to the V-Ray material that give you an extra touch of realism. We've also added some randomization controls to textures and colors that help you make your textures look even more real. When you're trying to do some renderings that have outlines on them, we've made that extremely simple with the global contours override. And when you're done with your render and you want to color correct or maybe balance the tones or add some filmic tone mapping, we can do that all inside of the V-Ray frame buffer now. And another really exciting new feature is called Light Mix, and that lets you adjust your lighting without having to re-render. We're going to hear from our friends at Archilime, and we're going to see how they've been putting V-Ray 5 for SketchUp to the test in their visualization projects. And then we'll wrap with a bit of question and answer if we have time. So go ahead and dive in a little bit. For those of you that already use SketchUp, you know that it's an incredibly intuitive 3D modeling application. And with V-Ray, it lets you take any design and sort of bring it to life. Just run you through some kinds of projects that you might see these days. Maybe you're working on some home remodeling. Maybe you're trying to redesign a bathroom or a kitchen. Good time to take a look at how you might redesign your home office, or maybe build yourself an office in the backyard, or even a treehouse. I don't know, it looks like it would be pretty exciting. Designing a new home, or potentially larger scale projects like museums and civic centers. Really, SketchUp and V-Ray let you take any of your SketchUp models and turn it into a fully realized work of art. So when I first got into rendering, I would often have to explain what rendering does. And, I like to tell people that it lets you take photos of things that don't exist. And so, V-Ray often has become the gold standard for realism. It's as close as you can get to the real thing before it's built. And we're known for architecture, but V-Ray is actually used in much more than architecture. It's used in feature film and television and advertising and automotive and so on, where realism is incredibly important. So here's just a few examples of places where V-Ray has been used, such as Avengers, or Guardians of the Galaxy, or Game of Thrones. And we're sort of excited. In 2017, V-Ray won an Academy Award for helping bring photorealistic ray tracing to feature films. And it's actually been used in over 300 films now. So that's the same V-Ray rendering technology that's under the hood inside of V-Ray for SketchUp. But when we looked at the way people used rendering, we often get into a design process that takes up most of our time. And that's, maybe most of it's design, and then the last part of the process when we go to share it with, our team or our client or so on, that's when we render. And we're sort of looking at it like, well, we spend 80% of our time in one thing and 20% in another, just to use some round numbers. What if we could bring real-time visualization to that 80%, where you're constantly on with design, and then you can render. But the thing is that we wanted to make sure that we had the full spectrum covered, and that there wasn't a gap between what you did in design and what you did in render. So really with V-Ray 5 for SketchUp, we're introducing this. It's a continuous spectrum where you have real time all the time and rendering at any time. So the entire process of visualization is fluid from start to finish. And so one of the most exciting new features inside of V-Ray 5 for SketchUp is called V-Ray Vision. And V-Ray Vision is a fully real-time visualization system. And normally when you're looking at your SketchUp model, it looks like, looks like this, or you're just taking a peek at something that's not quite realistic. And with Vision, with V-Ray Vision now, you can see that look much better with your textures, with your lighting, all in real time. And then when you're ready to render, you could take it to that next level of photorealism with V-Ray. So let's take a quick peek at how that looks. In this split screen on the left-hand side, I've got SketchUp, and on the right-hand side, I've got V-Ray Vision. And you can see while working in the SketchUp viewport, I'm modeling, I'm subtracting through some elements and extruding some things up, and you can see that shown in real time in Vision. And that Vision's got lighting and shading and textures and materials. It's all live linked together, and it just works seamlessly throughout. It's also perfect for when you're going to put in entourage. You can drop in V-Ray proxy elements, whether it's trees or furniture or people. And now you can assemble your scene and you can change the lighting. All of this is happening in real time, and it's happening right in SketchUp. So you don't have to worry about exporting to another system or translating it to anything. This is all using V-Ray's features right in the application. You can change, color corrections, you can walk around, and you can even export your animation sequences directly from V-Ray Vision. So we're really excited about where that's headed. And another thing that we're excited about is helping you light your scenes in a very intuitive and easy way. This is something that we previewed in a sort of a tech demonstration a while back. And now you can choose whether your scene is an exterior or if it's an interior, whether or not you want to use the sun and sky system, or if you want to use an HDR environment. And you choose the number of styles and variations that you want, and you generate a whole bunch of thumbnails that you can immediately see what the impact of your lighting is going to be like, and then select it and apply it to your scene. So it's such a great way to explore lots of different lighting scenarios for your scene. You can also save your light gen outputs and call them up at any time, which is a nice feature. And here you can sort of see it in action. So you've got different variations of altitude and styles and so on, and then a whole list of thumbnails that just immediately apply that look to your scene. We'll watch it one more time. Another exciting addition to V-Ray 5 for SketchUp that goes hand in hand with what you just saw with LightGen is we've included an HDRI Sky library. I want to give thanks to the folks at No Emotion who helped provide the HDR library, Peter Sinitra and Merrick Danko. Thank you guys for your help here. It's such a nice thing to be able to have this whole set of HDRs that you can just apply to your scene and look at with LightGen. So talking about lighting your scene, we've also made some improvements to the sun and sky model, and it's now more accurate, and it especially looks better at sunrise and sunset. So if you look on the left-hand side is the previous model that we were using, and on the right-hand side is the new and improved sky. And here's a quick look at what that looks like in action. So we've got the Hosek sky, which is the previous model, the improved sky. And you can see the coloration there is just is a bit nicer and more realistic. One other feature that we've added to the sun and sky is we've created custom controls. So you can actually change the orientation of the sun and sky independently. And this gives you complete control over where your shadows are coming from and so on, without sort of having to set up the SketchUp model to be in a specific geolocated place. So this is a nice addition to just helping you make that easier. Moving on to some of the material changes that we've added. We've added a new coat layer inside of the V-Ray material. And the coat layer lets you put on sort of this varnished coat or this reflective coating on top of your materials. And that, you can see the coat off on the left-hand side and the coat on the right-hand side. It's a really nice addition. It saves you from having to set up multiple shaders and put them together inside of a blend material. It's just all perfectly integrated inside of the V-Ray material now. Similarly, we've added a sheen layer inside the V-Ray material, and you can see the major difference that this makes when you're looking at soft fabric materials like velvet and satin and silk. It's such a huge difference. And if you look at the controls, they're very simple. You simply add a sheen color and a sheen glossiness amount. And if you look at this animation, here's without sheen, and there you go. There's that nice velvet looking microfiber material. So along those same lines of helping you add details and realism to your materials, we've added some new randomization tools. And if you look at this, this is a sort of a pine wood floor, and the material is repeating throughout on each one of the boards. To help combat that, we've added random texture UVs, which allows you to sort of place your UVs and randomize them so that each one of those boards has a different texture placement. And then we've taken it one step further, which is to let you easily add color variation to those. You can change the hue, saturation, and lightness of those boards. Now, we've exaggerated a bit here so that you could see it, but that's a really nice thing to have whenever you're trying to add subtle variations. Similarly, as part of that, we've added something called stochastic tiling. And stochastic tiling is a quick fix for repeating textures. So if I look at this leather fabric that I've got on this chair here, you can tell that it's repeating, and you can see each one of those squares doesn't look very good. But with stochastic tiling, you can turn that on and sort of jumble up the textures and procedurally mix that up so that you don't see those tiled artifacts anymore. And it's a really nice quick fix for that. So all of the things that I've just mentioned, the sheen layer, the coat layer, the randomness, and so on, we've brought that in to our material library, and we've updated the V-Ray 5 material library to take advantage of those tools. And we've also increased the resolution of our textures to be 4K now. So they're much higher resolution and more well suited for today's workflows. This is a fun one. So we've had V-Ray Dirt inside V-Ray for SketchUp for a while. It lets you sort of put dirt and grime in cracks and crevices. But what's new here is we've added the ability to layer in procedural streaks. So you can sort of see that on the left-hand side is clean, and then it's dirty, and then maybe too dirty. But here's a bigger example. So here's a look at it without dirt, layering on dirt, a little bit strong here, and then if you just dial that in, it's perfect. It gives you just that little bit of nuance that, you know, time has passed and there's a little weathering to that material. So there's a lot of folks that want to put line work on their renderings, especially, you know, in the earlier stages, and we've made that incredibly easy just with contour overrides. So you can easily go to your contours and set your line colors and the widths, and you can actually change whether it's how it handles the inner edges and outer edges. You can even export that out as a render element. And so that makes it incredibly easy just to add line work to your image. Also, we've got it set as overrides and materials as well. So if users want to take a particular material and add contours to that, you can do that right inside the material without having to create a separate toon shader and a separate material for it. So here's with it off, and there it is with it on. And one of the nice things here is that it works perfectly with animation. So if we just rotate around our model, you can see that that looks great. So that brings me to the new V-Ray frame buffer. The frame buffer is where you're going to finish and fine tune all of your renders right when you've completed it. And now let's say you want to do some color corrections. You want to change the levels and the curves and so on. You can do all of that. In fact, you can do it on each one of the render layers if you want. And so you can layer your render elements, you can add your denoising, all of that can happen inside of the V-Ray frame buffer now. So that saves you having to go to another application just to put the finishing touches on. You can also add lens effects in here. Filmic tone mapping has been added. And I'm going to talk about this in a second because it's pretty exciting. We're also going to show you how you can adjust your lighting inside the new V-Ray frame buffer. So here's a look at that in action. You can see what that looks like, adding the different types of render elements that you have access to. And you can maybe put in a little bit of atmospheric depth in there, change the color to give it a little bit of, give it a bit more depth, bring on your filmic tone mapping, and finish your image all in that one spot. So that brings me to another exciting feature, which is called Light Mix. And Light Mix lets you render one time, and then from that render, you can change your lighting instantly afterwards. So for example, here's again looking at the V-Ray frame buffer, and on the right-hand side, I've got the different lights saved out. I like to call this sort of rendering with smart bulbs. You know, if you have those in your house and you can change the color and the intensity of them, it puts everything sort of on dimmer switches. And this is all from one single render, and it's all happening live in real time, which I think we're going to hear a bit more about in a couple of minutes. So that brings me to our friends. Dan Stone has joined us today from Archilime. And he and his team have been working with V-Ray for SketchUp since early beta. They've also been using V-Ray for SketchUp for the better part of a decade, doing amazing work such as this. So here's a quick sample of some of the work that Dan and his team have been doing. And Dan's going to run you through some of the ways that they've been using some of the new tools. Let me turn it over to Dan. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Hi, Lon. How's it going?
Good, good. I'm glad to have you. I'm going to make you the presenter here.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk about the light mix.
Awesome. Maybe I have to stop being presenter.
Okay, so first of all, I'd just like to introduce myself. Really, thanks for having me, Lon, and thanks for that introduction. My name's Dan, and I'm the head of operations at Archilime Visualizations and also Archilime Academy. What I do is I manage a team of incredibly talented creatives that this is their day job. They produce CGIs for a living, and we're now in our 8th year of business. And we've been using V-Ray, you know, pretty much since the beginning. So like a lot of you watching, we're all self-taught as well. So we've been looking at forums, Facebook groups, YouTube videos, that kind of thing, ultimately with the goal of improving the quality of our renders in a shorter time frame. From a business perspective, this is quite important to us so that we can continue to, you know, produce more and more work. So a couple of years ago, what we decided to do was we had a lot of people asking us for advice, tips, how can I go about producing CGIs like you do? So we decided to start up an academy. And what this does is this will teach delegates the processes of modeling in SketchUp, how to use V-Ray, and even some post-production work in Photoshop as well. So this is our workflow. All of the images we're looking at here, they've all been modeled in SketchUp, rendered using V-Ray, and normally we do a little bit of post-production in Photoshop as well. So, I'd just like to rewind 8 years. 8 years ago, back to the beginning, and why we started to use V-Ray in the first place? As Lon says, it's always been pretty much the gold standard. Nothing else really came close to it, especially for SketchUp. So there's no proverbial glass ceiling, as it were, to the quality of work that you could produce. And V-Ray have been very good. The guys at Chaos Group have been amazing at improving. With each version, they've been adding more and more functions, more and more functionality, making it more user-friendly. Things like proxies and fur, they're all things that we use on a daily basis nowadays. And it's what we teach now in the academy as well. So we're proud to announce now we're the only, this week actually became the only certified authorized training center for V-Ray for SketchUp. So all of our courses now means that we can be teaching you how to become V-Ray certified professionals for V-Ray for SketchUp. So honestly, V-Ray 5 for SketchUp is probably the biggest leap. We're seeing the most improvement of a release that I've experienced in my 8-9 years of using V-Ray. So what I'd like to do is talk about one of my favorite features, which is the light mix. So as Lon alluded to before, we're looking at the option here of being able to render out a final image and dynamically tweak the lighting in the final image. So just to pause that for the time being, I'd like to introduce a typical pathway to our final render. So what we would do is, like I'd imagine you all do, you model in SketchUp first, you develop the massing. We then start applying textures, adding furniture and population, before then working on the lighting. So you're developing a lighting setup so that you can then create drafts, inevitably to show a client of some description. We like to have clients in at this point, either the face-to-face or, on Zoom. It's quite a nice time to do this. So what I would like to do is talk about the power that the light mix has when drafting and showing clients your work. So I'd just like to explain what we've got here. This is the light mix within the frame buffer. So what I've done is I've added lights to my SketchUp scene. So you can see we have some IES lights up here, got some spotlights over here on the wall. We've got an Omni light in there. We've got a dome light, which is in use as well. And the way that the light mix works is it will combine all of those individual light sources and then merge them within the frame buffer, within the light mix. So we can see here, by turning off all of the lights, I can now systematically turn these on and off, adjust the color, and also the intensity. And we can see this changing and adapting in real time. So this is, groundbreaking for us. For me personally, this really is the biggest change this is the biggest change to our workflow, because it enables us to render out a draft image, which can be quite high quality. You could spend, a few hours rendering an image, and then in a meeting with a client, really just be playing with the values and the colors here of each of these individual light sources. So what I want to do now is just run through and almost recreate this lighting setup after initially setting up my scene using only white lights, having them all turned on, and now I'm going to turn some of these off and tweak some of the values just to show you how quick it can be. So I'm going to turn them all off to start off with. Turn back on the HDRI, which is a nice dusk setup I've got here from CG Source. Here we can see I can change the intensity, but to gauge just how intense this light source is, I'm just going to turn on my force color clamping, and we can see here this dark area, I need to now minimize the amount of burnout that we're experiencing over there. So it now looks fairly well balanced. You know, we're not getting over bright pixels. What we can now do is start working on some of the other lights. Now I know the other big light sources that I have in this space are the IES lights, which are up here. So I'm going to scroll down and turn one of these on. So the intensity, I'm happy with this one. And also I'm happy with the intensity of this one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and create a little bit of chromatic contrast between the two. So I want a nice blue light on the left here, a nice warm light on the right. And what I'll then do is there's a light in between the two, which I'm actually going to take a nice, almost standard artificial type of light here. And what we can see is quite quickly here, what I've managed to do is create a real sense of emotion within this image. Without going too much into it, we can see that the coolness around the door transitions to the more warmer light around the sofa. And I think this is quite powerful, you know, being able to turn, adjust the coloration of some of these light sources just at the flick of a switch is really quite incredible. I can then go through and just adjust the remaining few lights. Cool. So this is pretty much our image. You know, this is our final image. Imagine this is a client meeting. It's as easy as that. I could be working up the image in such a way that the client could be making suggestions. It's that fast. So the next step, really, before saving it out, is we can now take a look at some of the lens effects options which they have now within the frame buffer. So I'm just going to increase the intensity of this light source here for just a moment. Before now turning on the lens effects. So the lens effects, as Lon was saying, these enable us to add, you know, those last flourishes, the finishing touches before we go and save out our images and show anybody else. So you can see here that I've been playing around with this earlier, and we can adjust the intensity of this bloom or glare effect. Adjust the size, and you've got lots and lots of different options here. I'd highly recommend everybody try this. When you get V-Ray 5 for SketchUp, this new frame buffer, it's just put everything that you need to create really nice images in one place. So definitely give the lens effects a go as well. So this basically gives us unlimited possibilities with regards to the lighting and how we go about creating different types of lighting setups. I could very easily here turn on the sun and create a daytime scene, or create a fully nighttime scene outside rather than a dusk kind of feel at the moment. So I absolutely love this feature, and I can't wait to start teaching it to our delegates in the Archilime Academy. So I mean, it's a shame I don't have enough time to talk about all of the other features, but the next one I would like to talk about is a little bit more, it's V-Ray Vision. So it's the one that Lon highlighted earlier. And what I've done here is I've just taken a screen recording of myself earlier on as I was having a play with, that's not quite working there. There we go. So I was having a play around with V-Ray Vision earlier on in the week. And this is basically an interactive render, but supercharged. You know, this thing is incredible. It essentially, what it does is it's like a gaming engine almost, where it will allow you, using your graphics card, to interactively make adjustments to your scene. So what we're looking at here is quite a light model that I loaded into Vision last week, and what it enables us to do is adjust the lighting setup, and we can instantly see the feedback of the changes that we're making. So obviously I'm moving around here, orbiting. I'm orbiting within the vision window. So you don't actually have to be moving around and navigating within SketchUp like you do for the interactive rendering. This obviously has implications for client meetings again. So whether you're doing these online these days or in person, you could have your client there, your screen recording, and you could be quite easily just walking around your model and interacting with it in real time. Much like I'm showing you, really, a client can pass comments. Eventually, when the world goes back to normal, they could be using these shortcuts here on the screen to be navigating this themselves when they come and visit the office. And really, it's just, I do anticipate the level of client engagement in your work is only going to go up. Like with everything, if the reasons we have this job is because we need to be showing people their designs, and I think this is definitely, it adds another layer of realism to the potentially noisy, sometimes interactive rendering of the past. So this is only a good thing in my eyes, and adjustments to the environment and the lighting setups, with them all being changed in real time, it enables you to start doing things like adding light sources, which is what I'm about to do here. Adding a light source into the scene, we can see that it gets applied directly into V-Ray Vision. So I'm just equally spacing these along the soffit here. And what I'm trying to do is, whilst experimenting, I'm just trying to gauge how much of an effect this is instilling within my work. So what I'm going to do is I now start tweaking the color of the light, making it a nice funky blue, just so that I can see the intensity of the light so much more in relation to the daylight. And what I'm looking for is, ideally, I can now start really tweaking the shape of these spotlights. So this isn't just limited to spotlights. We could be bringing in any other light source, start making tweaks. We'll see this directly applied to the vision window. So I've just pulled out the slab so that I can really start working on the cone angle, the penumbra angle of this spotlight. And I just hope it goes to prove really just how much, how maneuverable, how malleable V-Ray Vision really is. It's definitely something which, looking forward to upcoming client meetings, this is definitely something which I'm going to be pulling out. It requires no extra work. All we're doing is just hitting the V-Ray Vision button, and really it's that's about it. It's pretty much those two features are the two biggest changes that I've experienced having used V-Ray for the best part of a decade. So I'd just like to hand back over to Lon now, where I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about what else there is to V-Ray 5.
Yeah, Dan, thank you so much. That looks awesome, and we really appreciate you running everybody through seeing that in a real world scenario. It's probably a good time to answer a question that I saw show up in the chat while you were talking there.
Sure.
Pop over to the presentation here. Some folks were asking about the difference between sort of V-Ray Vision and Project Lavina, and V-Ray Vision is actually a raster graphics engine that's designed to run on essentially any hardware. So it's fully real time, and you should be able to run it on a laptop and so on. With Project Lavina, it's a 100% ray traced real time experience, and it's a standalone application, so it's not necessarily embedded into the workflow. And it requires an RTX card. It requires an NVIDIA RTX GPU at the moment, because it takes advantage of the ray tracing cores that are on that hardware. So similar concepts where we want to take that real-time visualization experience to every part of the workflow that you have. So hopefully that helps, and you should be hearing more about where Project Lavina in very soon, let's say. Couple of quick other things for those of you that are using GPUs. You'd be glad to know that all of the new V-Ray 5 features are supported in GPU, It's also faster. It's going to support 2D displacement and cellular textures. And we've also added our first implementation of out-of-core geometry, which means that if you're working on a scene that's pretty large and the geometry is maybe too big to fit into the RAM of your video card, this is a way to allow that to work without going over. So those are pretty exciting features as well. And that brings me to sort of the end here, just to remind anybody that if you're interested, if you want to try out these new features, you want to try out Vision and LightGen and Light Mix, that's all available now. You can get a 30-day free trial over at chaosgroup.com/vray/SketchUp and give that a whirl. I think now is a good time to maybe see what other questions there are. One of the questions just says, wow, you guys are awesome, which thank you. We appreciate that. Those are the kind of questions that are the best ones to get. I do see another one here that says, how will you be able to access the HDRI library? And maybe that's a good time to turn it over to our product specialist, Constantine, to talk maybe a little bit more about how the HDRI library is accessible with V-Ray 5 for SketchUp.
Yeah, sure, Lon. Can you hear me, first of all?
You're loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, so as Lon mentioned already, all the HDR images that we are using in the for LightGen were provided by the No Emotion guys. But then they were heavily edited because we were after specific effects in LightGen. For example, the light intensity for each one of the HDRIs was balanced to match the real world lighting that would come from a similar environment. Also, the sun in each one of the images was painted out, and a V-Ray sun was added in its place, which comes with the V-Ray sun's natural light intensity and natural light color as well. So the HDRs were modified, and they're quite valuable, and they're free for everyone to use. You can access them in a location on your computer after they're downloaded. The default location where they get stored is in Documents on Windows. There is a folder called V-Ray Material Library, and then there's a folder AEC in there, and the HDRs are inside, so everyone can check them out or use them for other purposes outside of LightGen. But of course, keep in mind that we might decide to update the HDRs available on the Chaos servers remotely, and your files will get updated locally, so they might change at one point. So if you intend to use them in any different way, make sure to copy them somewhere else.
Great, thanks for that, Constantine.
There was actually another interesting question in the chat about the HDRs and the lighting with the V-Ray dome light, which I might answer here, because Great. I think more than one person asked it. So the question was, are we going to add an option in V-Ray that finds the brightest pixel in an HDR image and places the V-Ray sun over there? And in fact, this was the first idea we had when we started working on LightGen. We wanted to use the V-Ray sunlight combined with the HDR environment and match both. But later on, we realized that the V-Ray dome light is so good and so fast at its importance sampling, and the results are so good that we don't even need to do that. I mean, if the sunlight or the sun disk in the HDR image is with the correct intensity, size, and color, then the V-Ray dome light will create perfectly accurate lighting in the scene. You'll see sharp shadows from the sun and so on. Additionally, this was not working so great in V-Ray Vision. So in V-Ray you have the dome light, but in Vision, which is like the game engine alternative, you don't have anything like the dome light. There's no importance sampling, nothing like it. And basically a bright pixel in the HDR image was not producing the lighting you'd expect. Because of that, in Vision, we added a detection for the brightest spot in the image, and we are placing a sunlight over there. So this feature is partially implemented where it makes sense in Vision.
Great, thank you for that, Konstantin. I see a couple of questions in there where people want to know, how easy is it to export your animation from V-Ray Vision?
Yeah, so it is actually pretty easy to export it. Of course, currently Vision doesn't have animation tools of its own. If you want to animate something, you have to animate the camera, for example, in SketchUp using the SketchUp scenes, the SketchUp pages, and add transitions between those. Then you can enable animation in the V-Ray asset editor, and the animation will appear and be available in Vision. And then you can scrub through the timeline, play the animation to check it out, or you can just go to the image export options and export the whole thing as a sequence. Currently, we are not exporting videos. We're exporting image sequences similar to what V-Ray does, but I'm pretty sure that V-Ray users know how to compose it and create a final video out of them. At least you get the full quality of the images.
There's another question in here, Konstantin, about someone said he heard that in V-Ray 5 you do not need to put a rectangle light as a portal light behind the windows. Is that true?
Yes, that's correct. That even applies to V-Ray Next, I should say, but it's even more optimized in V-Ray 5. So previously, users had to create portal lights at Windows just to help V-Ray with its ray tracing. You are bringing some direct light into the closed space by utilizing this technique. And this way interiors were lit better. And another great thing about the portals was that they were sampling the environment which is behind them. So the portal light at the window would sample the sky, or it would sample the HDR image used in the environment, and then it will bring direct light into the closed space, so that the GI, the global illumination tracing, was not being relied on 100%. But later on, even in V-Ray Next, we added great improvement to the V-Ray dome light. A new importance sampling algorithm, which is so fast and so optimal that you can just place a single dome light in your set, place the camera in the closed space, and the dome light will be sampled in the best possible way, in the most optimal way. So you no longer have to help V-Ray with the portal lights. It's fast enough on its own. But of course, it requires a dome light. The portals were working without it. And now the recommended workflow is, of course, in any situation, being an exterior or an interior, you always create a dome light, and V-Ray should take care of the rest.
And Konstantin, you were telling me about some pretty cool and interesting things about how LightGen approaches interior lighting. When we showed the example here, we showed an exterior, but maybe you want to tell everybody a little bit about how it works for interiors.
Yes. So when you're trying to light an exterior, LightGen will try all possible light angles and environment rotations, and will give you all the different versions coming out of that. But we realized that the same technique, if you add a HDR image to the environment and you start rotating it, this doesn't work so great when you're in a closed space, because usually you're in a room, there's 1 or 2 windows, and most of the light angles don't make much sense. So there's no direct light coming from the window, and so on and so forth. So most of the concepts were coming out similar. They were not different enough. So you would have been looking at many similar images in the LightGen result window. But then we figure out a better way to approach that. And now in the current version, LightGen is performing like an analysis stage before the rendering starts. It finds only the interesting light angles and uses only them for the concepts that you see in the final list, like the final thumbnails. And of course, if you have specified that you want 100 concepts, it will discard the less interesting ones, and it will fill in with more interesting light angles. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Konstantin. Were there any other questions that you saw in there that you?
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the questions right now because there are plenty of them.
I did see somebody asked if there's going to be some, new tutorials to go over these new features, and I imagine you and the team are going to be working on getting some new materials out there pretty soon, right?
Yes, I hope so, because we added too many things in that new version, and we need to communicate with our clients and show them how the tools are used. There's one interesting question which asks whether it's possible to populate V-Ray lighting sources through a Ruby script. There's in fact a big improvement in that regard in V-Ray 5. So previously we had access to the V-Ray tools, V-Ray materials, V-Ray lights, and everything in the V-Ray scene using Ruby scripts, but this whole thing was not documented at all. And we basically realized how important this is for SketchUp users. So there are many third-party developers, script developers, plugin developers, and so on, who need full script access to the V-Ray scene and ways to modify it. So in V-Ray 5, we have implemented a new API, which is in Ruby, obviously, and it's documented. And it's also with long-term support, meaning that will not be changing API calls like methods, variables, and so on. Often we'll try to keep everything compatible. So if you write a script or a tool that works with V-Ray, it should be supported long-term.
I do see a couple questions in here, Konstantin. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about what's the difference between V-Ray Vision and the interactive render?
Well, there's quite a big difference. First of all, let me start by explaining what the V-Ray interactive renderer is. It is the production renderer running in interactive mode. So every time you're using the interactive rendering mode, you will see a production quality ray traced image on screen. And that's why the image is noisy, and then the quality of the image starts to improve once you stop introducing changes or stop moving the camera. So you can think about the interactive mode as a production interactive rendering engine. So it will resolve to production quality if you let it render long enough, and it supports 100% of the production features that V-Ray provides. And of course, it can be pretty fast. It can feel like a real-time solution, especially if you enable the NVIDIA AI denoising algorithm. But still, there is this initial stage in which the image is noisy and not that pleasant to look at. Vision is something completely different. It uses the same scene, it uses the same lights, the same materials. You don't have to change anything there. But Vision is a game engine, so it will show you the scene in full real time. There is not going to be any noisy stage. If you wait and stop interacting with the scene, the quality of vision will not improve. You always see the final quality. If your scene is very heavy, if you have a lot of objects, many textures, many lights, and so on, you might see a decrease in the frame rate in Vision, but the quality is basically constant. Another thing that I have to mention, and there were many questions in the chat about the hardware requirements of Vision. it's important to say that Vision does not require an RTX card, and currently doesn't do any ray tracing. It's fully, it's a rasterizer, basically. It's a pure rasterizer. No ray tracing is involved. So you can use it even with older cards. You don't need high-end GPU in order to run it. The only issues you might experience is a drop in frame rate. And the idea behind V-Ray Vision is that sometimes the quality of the rasterizer is sufficient to a client or for a presentation that you want to make, and that's when it really shines. Sometimes you don't have time to ray trace like the whole path of the camera, like a full animation, and you still want to show it to a client or to the decision maker. Then you can just run Vision, transfer your animation there, export it, and it's done in minutes.
Great. Thank you for answering all those questions, Konstantin. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate everybody joining us today to see this intro to V-Ray 5 for SketchUp. Really excited to introduce that to everyone, and hopefully you'll get an opportunity to experiment with it yourself. I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go to chaosgroup.com/vray/SketchUp and get the 30-day free trial and give it a try yourself. Thanks to Dan at Archilime for sharing his workflow. We really appreciate that, Dan. Thanks so much. And also want to give a shout out not only to Konstantin, who's the product specialist, for answering questions, but also working hard on the launch, and to our 3D team for helping provide the visuals for today. Thanks, everybody, and stay well.